One overlooked maintenance log, one faulty sensor, one moment of impatience. That's all it took to turn ultimate luxury into the 6 most shocking deaths ever linked to extreme wealth. These aren't just tragic accidents at exclusive destinations. They're reminders that in the world of high-end experiences, the smallest oversight can become the ultimate price. It was June 28, 2015, when Emmett Lawson, a 34-year-old marketing consultant known for his adventurous spirit and love of dramatic photo opportunities, arrived at a cliffside luxury resort perched high above the Pacific coastline. He had booked a private suite with an infinity pool and frameless glass balustrade for a weekend celebration with close friends. The view was breathtaking, the kind that demanded to be captured and shared. Joining him were Nora, a 28-year-old event coordinator whose meticulous nature kept the group organized; Victor, a 41-year-old freelance photographer with an assertive eye for composition; Alma, a 33-year-old physical therapist who approached everything with caution; and Diego, a 25-year-old valet with an easygoing demeanor who had been invited after helping the group settle in. The evening air was cool, with a light onshore breeze carrying mist from the waves, crashing 50 feet below. The pool coping glistened with moisture. Earlier that week, a maintenance log had flagged concerns about the southwest glass panel. The left spigot clamp showed loosening, and corrosion staining was visible at the base. Replacement had been scheduled for the following week, but the reservation proceeded without restriction. During the afternoon, 2 guests had leaned heavily against the same panel for group photos, adding unseen stress to the already compromised anchors. As sunset approached, Victor suggested capturing wide-angle shots from the pool ledge. Emmett, eager for the perfect frame, stepped onto the narrow coping. A serving cart sat just inches from the panel line. His heel brushed the cart wheel, nudging it into the base spigot housing. The left spigot clamp slipped. The right anchor, weakened by hidden corrosion, partially released. The panel tilted several degrees outward. Emmett's hand pressed the top rail for balance, but the tilted glass no longer provided stable support. The wet coping offered no traction. His center of mass shifted past the edge. He slid off, unable to recover footing, and fell approximately 50 feet toward the rock shelf below. The tempered glass cracked under tension, but did not fully shatter until the moment of detachment, fragments scattering into the surf below. His left side struck first. The impact fractured multiple ribs, creating a flail segment that destabilized his chest wall. His spleen and liver tore from blunt force. His pelvis shattered on the uneven surface. A secondary head strike produced a skull fracture, and consciousness vanished almost instantly. Moments later, a wave surged across the shelf, washing over his face and chest. His compromised breathing became ineffective, then stopped entirely. Nora saw the panel give way and immediately alerted security. Diego guided responders to a service stairway, while Victor pointed out the failed spigots. A rescue team descended with a board, navigating the surge intervals. They placed airway adjuncts and began CPR, but the chest instability and catastrophic internal injuries made ventilation nearly impossible. Given the height and impact surface, responders recognized survival chances were minimal even before transport. He was pronounced on scene. The investigation revealed the corroded spigot anchor and the deferred replacement. Wet conditions, the external load from the cart, and prior stress from leaning guests were documented as contributing factors. The entire panel line was closed. All spigots were replaced, load testing became mandatory, and exclusion zones near balustrades were instituted during events. What had been designed as a safe luxury feature became a fatal gap in maintenance protocol, ending a life in seconds. It was February 11th, 2016, when Kaylee Morton, a 29-year-old fitness instructor known for her enthusiasm and willingness to try cutting-edge wellness treatments, checked into a boutique retreat nestled in the mountains. She had signed up for a premium package that included guided full-body cryotherapy as part of an intensive conditioning program. Kaylee was drawn to the promise of faster recovery and enhanced performance, and she approached the experience with her characteristic optimism. The wellness director, Ren, a 36-year-old methodical professional who prided himself on safety protocols, had overseen dozens of sessions without incident. Lila, the 27-year-old attentive receptionist, handled scheduling and client briefings. Omar, a 39-year-old quiet HVAC contractor, had been on site earlier that week, addressing temperature inconsistencies. Jules, A 31-year-old upbeat guest had completed her own session that morning and raved about the results. The cryotherapy room was an electric-chilled chamber designed to drop temperatures rapidly using refrigerated air, with no nitrogen involved. An external console controlled cycle duration and managed the door interlock system. That afternoon, Omar had noted that the temperature probe intermittently read below its set point and recommended recalibration before the evening block. The service request was logged but not completed. Kaylee arrived for her session wearing protective footwear and ear coverings. She also wore insulated gloves and had removed all jewelry to prevent cold burns following standard cryotherapy precautions. Ren conducted the standard briefing, explaining the 2 to 3 minute cycle and the importance of staying calm. The interlock had been tested once that morning, but not rechecked after a software update. No second attendant was assigned for the evening shift. Because the chamber lacked a redundant mechanical cutoff relay, the cooling system continued running despite the software fault, compounding the overcooling. Kaylee entered the chamber, and Ren initiated the cycle from the console. The refrigerated air began dropping the temperature rapidly. A soft alert appeared on the screen and then cleared. Ren stepped to an adjacent monitoring station to adjust settings, leaving the console briefly unattended. The door interlock sensor misread the latch position. Moments later, the console froze, allowing the cycle to overrun its programmed duration. Inside, Kaylee stood near the coldest diffuser. The air remained clear, but the temperature continued to plummet. Her movements began to slow as the cold penetrated her core. She attempted to approach the door, but the internal egress mechanism did not release due to the frozen interlock. Her muscle function deteriorated rapidly. She collapsed inside the chamber, unable to call out or signal distress. Ren returned to the console and immediately recognized the freeze. He used the manual override, but the door required a brief reset delay before releasing. When he finally opened it, Kaylee was unresponsive on the floor, her core temperature dangerously low. Lila activated the emergency protocol. EMS arrived and began active rewarming with warmed oxygen and intravenous fluids. Despite aggressive treatment, cardiac instability developed. Her heart could not sustain a rhythm, and she was pronounced dead from profound hypothermia. The investigation uncovered multiple failures. The console software had frozen due to an unresolved bug. The interlock sensor had misread the latch. The recalibration Omar recommended had been deferred. Single operator coverage meant no backup oversight. The retreat immediately suspended all cryotherapy services. New protocols mandated 2-person supervision, pre-session interlock tests, firmware updates, and a redundant time limit cutoff, independent of the console. A treatment meant to optimize performance had instead become a fatal trap, claiming a young life in minutes. It was September 3rd, 2017, when Darren Blake, a 38-year-old software engineer with a passion for high-performance driving and a competitive edge, arrived at a private members circuit for an exclusive track day. He had been looking forward to this weekend for months, eager to push his limits on a course known for its challenging hairpin turns and long straights. Darren was confident behind the wheel, having completed multiple track events over the past 2 years. The day's operations were overseen by Tamsin, a 44-year-old strict track marshal who took safety protocols seriously, and Merrick, a 52-year-old formal club steward. Eli, a 29-year-old diligent mechanic from a mid-sized performance shop, was on site providing technical support. Quinn, a 26-year-old calm guest driver, had run the morning session without issue. The weather was dry with a steady crosswind, and tire temperatures were climbing from repeated high-speed laps. After Darren's previous session, he mentioned to Eli that the brake pedal felt slightly long. Eli bled the brake lines and advised a thorough pad and line inspection before extended runs. Darren acknowledged the recommendation, but was eager to get back on track. The briefing had covered emergency procedures, and his vehicle was equipped with a roll cage, multi-point harness, and HANS device. Corner workers were stationed at high-risk turns, including the notorious hairpin at the end of the main straight. Darren accelerated hard down the straight, reaching speeds well over 120 miles per hour. As he approached the hairpin, he initiated heavy braking, The pedal traveled farther than expected, nearly reaching the floor. Hydraulic pressure was severely limited due to brake fluid boiling from heat generated during previous laps. A micro leak at a line junction under extreme temperature had worsened the fade. Deceleration dropped far below what was needed. He downshifted aggressively, hoping engine braking would compensate, but it provided only partial assistance. His front tires, already overheated, offered reduced grip. The crosswind pushed the car slightly offline. Darren aimed for the paved runoff area, but the combination of diminished braking and compromised tire performance extended his stopping distance dramatically. The front right corner struck an energy-absorbing barrier at an oblique angle. Telemetry logs later confirmed Darren began braking roughly 210 feet from the apex, consistent with his earlier safe laps. But deceleration was 40% lower than expected. The rapid deceleration was violent. The footwell deformed inward, crushing both of Darren's lower legs. His chest slammed against the harness, fracturing multiple ribs and causing a cardiac contusion. The blunt force trauma disrupted his heart's ability to pump effectively. Residual fuel vapors briefly ignited before being quickly suppressed by marshals using handheld extinguishers. They began extraction using hydraulic spreaders. The medical crew performed airway management, bilateral chest decompression for suspected pneumothorax, and fluid resuscitation. Darren was carefully removed and transported to a nearby trauma center. He was pronounced dead shortly after arrival due to catastrophic blunt force injuries. The technical review revealed brake fluid boiling and the micro leak at the line junction. Elevated tire temperatures and crosswind were noted as contributing factors. The club immediately mandated high-temperature brake fluid specifications, pre-session brake line inspections, and real-time brake temperature monitoring. The barrier was extended and re-angled to provide a longer deceleration zone. What had begun as an exhilarating day ended in tragedy. It was July 19th, 2018, when Sienna Caldwell, a 31-year-old graphic designer known for her adventurous personality and love of ocean activities, boarded a 180-foot luxury charter yacht with her family for a week-long voyage along the coast. The trip promised water sports, gourmet dining, and evening excursions to secluded beaches. Sienna was excited about the tender rides to shore, having never experienced this level of maritime luxury before. The yacht's crew included Marco, a 47-year-old experienced bosun who had worked charter vessels for over 2 decades, Lani, a 34-year-old detail-oriented steward, and Hannah, a 22-year-old cautious deckhand still learning tender operations. Pierce, a 38-year-old energetic guest and Sienna's brother-in-law, was eager to explore the shoreline restaurants that evening. The stern platform featured a davit crane system designed to launch and recover the rigid, inflatable tender. Earlier that week, Marco had noted intermittent jitter in the crane's slew control during low-speed adjustments. The issue was logged, and service was scheduled for the next port, but operations continued as the malfunction seemed minor. The sea state that evening was generally calm, with a gentle swell and occasional larger sets rolling through. A light crosswind affected the yacht's stern alignment. Standard procedure required guests to remain clear of the platform while the tender was suspended, with taglines used to restrain any swing during launch. Marco briefed the group on safety protocols before beginning. The tender was lifted and positioned just above the waterline. Hannah and Pierce held taglines under Marco's direction to keep the boat stable. As the crane operator began lowering, a larger swell lifted the stern. He feathered the slew control to compensate, but the jitter returned suddenly, causing an unexpected lateral swing of the tender. The taglines momentarily lost tension as the boat shifted. A semi-rigid inflatable tube compressed against the yacht's transom corner, forming a powerful pinch point rather than a blunt strike. Sienna, eager to board and unaware of the danger, stepped forward onto the platform, entering the crush zone between the tender and the yacht's transom. The rigid inflatables tube swung toward the platform edge. Before anyone could react, the tube made contact with the corner of the transom, creating a pinch point. Sienna's lower torso and pelvis were caught and compressed between the two surfaces. The operator immediately raised the load to relieve pressure, but another swell arrived. worsening the compression for a critical second before the tender cleared. The damage was catastrophic. Her pelvis was crushed, causing major vascular disruption and internal organ damage. Blood pressure dropped rapidly as internal hemorrhaging began. Marco and Hannah pulled her onto the platform as the tender was secured. They applied pressure dressings and administered oxygen. An AED was attached, but it detected a non-shockable rhythm, indicating her heart was failing due to blood loss. Sienna remained unresponsive, her breathing shallow and irregular. A medevac helicopter was requested but delayed due to dusk and moderate swell, forcing rescuers to rely on nearby response craft. A marine rescue call was made immediately. The yacht adjusted its heading to reduce motion. A fast response craft arrived with advanced care medics, but without blood products available on board, there was no way to replace the massive volume lost. Refractory hypovolemic arrest set in, and she was pronounced dead on scene. The investigation identified the slew control jitter, momentary loss of tagline tension during the swell, and Sienna stepping onto the platform under a suspended load as the primary factors. The yacht operator immediately replaced the crane control unit and instituted a strict no boarding rule under suspended loads. A new policy required floating dock transfers only during swell conditions. It was January 23, 2016, when Trent Harrison, a 42-year-old investment banker with a passion for backcountry skiing and a reputation for seeking adrenaline-fueled experiences, arrived at a remote alpine staging area for a premium heli-ski operation. He had paid top dollar for access to untracked powder on steep terrain that few would ever see. Trent was fit, experienced, and confident in his abilities. The operation was led by Aga, a 37-year-old analytical lead guide known for her cautious decision-making and deep understanding of avalanche terrain. Bruno, a 45-year-old helicopter pilot with thousands of mountain flight hours, handled the drops with precision. The group included May, a 32-year-old technical skier, and Lars, a 40-year-old reserved guest who preferred to follow the guide's lead. That morning, the regional avalanche bulletin had been upgraded to considerable hazard. Wind loading on leeward slopes had been observed throughout the week, and earlier compression tests showed propagating fractures in the upper slab layers. Aga briefed the group on strict spacing protocols at the ridgeline, emphasizing that skiers must wait outside the propagation zone until signaled. Conditions were marginal, with intermittent spindrift and rising gusts. Temperatures were well below freezing. The helicopter dropped the team on a narrow ridge overlooking a steep leeward bowl with a convex rollover at approximately 36 degrees. Each skier carried an avalanche transceiver, probe, and shovel, standard for guided heliskiing operations. Aga planned to cut a small test slope to assess stability before committing the group. She instructed everyone to hold their positions well back from the convex feature. Trent, eager and slightly impatient, positioned himself a few feet downslope of the advised waiting point, closer to the rollover than protocol allowed. Aga entered the test slope and made her first turn. A cohesive wind slab fractured above the convex roll with a sharp crack. The fracture line propagated wider and faster than expected. Trent, standing within the propagation zone, felt the snow shift beneath him. The slab released and began to slide, carrying him downslope before he could react. He attempted to angle out toward the edge, but the moving mass accelerated rapidly as the slab broke into tumbling blocks. Trent collided with buried timber and embedded rocks hidden beneath the snow. The impacts fractured multiple ribs and caused a suspected pelvic fracture. His skis released under the violent load. The flow funneled into a shallow terrain trap, and he was tumbled repeatedly before being progressively buried as the snow settled and compacted around him. The injuries to his chest wall compromised his ability to breathe effectively. Snow packed tightly around his face, obstructing his airway. Asphyxia began within moments. Aga immediately activated the emergency protocol. The group switched their transceivers to search mode and fixed Trent's signal within 2 minutes. A probe strike confirmed his location under roughly 5.5 feet of dense, compacted snow. Shoveling began with focus on exposing his airway first, then his chest. When they reached him, he showed no spontaneous respirations. CPR was initiated on the snow. Bruno repositioned the helicopter and re-landed between gusts to deploy advanced medical equipment. Rewarming efforts and airway management continued, but the combination of prolonged burial, blunt force trauma, and asphyxia had caused irreversible damage. Trent was declared deceased at the staging area. The post-incident review identified several contributing factors. Trent's positioning downslope of the safe zone placed him within the propagation path. The wind-loaded leeward face with a convex rollover had underestimated propagation potential. The terrain trap increased burial depth. The operation immediately tightened spacing enforcement and expanded avoidance protocols for convex start zones under wind loading conditions. It was November 7th, 2015, when Lacey Whitman, a 27-year-old elementary school teacher known for her warm personality and love of quiet getaways, arrived at a secluded beach resort with her partner for a romantic weekend escape. They had booked a standalone overwater bungalow, a luxury suite perched above crystal-clear water with a private deck, spa tub, and panoramic ocean views. Lacey was thrilled about the seclusion and tranquility the location promised. The resort staff included Tomas, a 35-year-old methodical maintenance technician responsible for the overwater units, Priya, a 30-year-old welcoming concierge, and Mara, a 28-year-old thorough housekeeper who took pride in her attention to detail. Jonah, a 46-year-old observant guest, was staying in a neighboring bungalow. The bungalow featured an independent power system with a compact generator housed in a vented bay beneath the deck. A prior guest had reported a faint fuel-like odor on a windy evening earlier that week. Tomas had logged the complaint and scheduled a generator service, but the appointment was still pending. The suite also had a legacy battery-operated carbon monoxide detector that had not been replaced with a hardwired model. The maintenance log showed the battery change was overdue. Lacey and her partner spent the afternoon enjoying the spa tub and lounging on the deck. As evening approached, they closed the sliding glass doors to keep the air conditioning effective and settled in for a quiet dinner delivered to the room. Music played softly in the background. The television remained on as they relaxed. Beneath the deck, the generator operated under evening load. A coupling on the exhaust system had loosened over time, creating a small leak. That night, wind conditions were calm, limiting the natural dispersion of exhaust gases. Carbon monoxide began to accumulate in the subdeck space. The gas infiltrated the suite through floor-level gaps and an unsealed utility conduit that had never been properly sealed during construction. With the windows closed and the air conditioning recirculating indoor air, the concentration of carbon monoxide inside the bungalow increased steadily. The aging detector, with a depleted battery, failed to sound an alarm. Lacey reclined on the lounge after her bath, unaware of the invisible danger filling the room. Carbon monoxide binds to hemoglobin in the blood far more effectively than oxygen, progressively reducing the body's ability to deliver oxygen to vital organs. As carboxyhemoglobin levels rose, Lacey's coordination and responsiveness diminished without her realizing it. She lay back on the chaise, and her breathing became shallow. Her partner, seated nearby, also began to feel the effects and dozed off. No external noise prompted concern from adjacent bungalows. The generator continued to cycle, and the exhaust leak persisted. Lacey lost consciousness as the concentration reached fatal levels. Her respiratory effort weakened and eventually ceased. The enclosed space, combined with continuous exposure and no functioning alarm, created a lethal environment. The next morning, Mara arrived for scheduled housekeeping. She knocked, received no response, and used her key to enter. She immediately noticed both occupants were unresponsive and called for emergency assistance. Responders ventilated the suite and administered high-flow oxygen. Lacey showed no pulse, and resuscitation efforts were unsuccessful. Her partner was transported with severe carbon monoxide poisoning, but survived after treatment. The investigation confirmed the loose exhaust coupling, the unsealed utility conduit, the depleted detector battery, and inadequate fresh air makeup as contributing factors. The resort immediately installed hardwired carbon monoxide detectors with remote monitoring in all overwater units. Mandatory vent integrity checks and conduit sealing became standard. Maintenance intervals were shortened and required dual signatures. A weekend meant for rest ended in a silent, preventable tragedy. Thanks for watching. Want to watch more? Click on your screen now.